Okay, chapter 9 of Hero's Guide to Get to Dragons is called The Hairy Scary Librarian. The something was as man as tall and thin as a broom, with a wild mop of hair and a beard so long he could have wiped his feet on it. He had tucked his scabbard into his beard into his belt, along with a whole armoury of nasty-looking weapons, axes, swords, and a terrifying north bow. Hiccup immediately recognised the man as the hairy, scary librarian himself, for he had seen him many times before at elders' meetings. Somehow, though he hadn't looked half as scary out in the open, all surrounded by the other Viking warriors. Here in the cold heart of his library, with his cold and sad half-blind eyes and his cracked voice whispering like his throat was full of broken glass. Here he was very scary indeed. "The library is closed," croaked the hairy, scary librarian. Kamikaze backed away from him. Yes, we were just leaving, actually," she said quietly, drawing out her own sword. "Shh," said the librarian. "Your friend has one of my books in his backpack. It's strictly forbidden to remove books from the library. Give it back to me, please, or I shall be reluctantly forced to kill you." Hiccup drew his sword as well. Fishling's tried to draw his. Oh, I love Fishlings. He's always trying, but he unfortunately is stuck in the scabbard, and however hard he tried, he couldn't pull it out. "I'm very, very sorry," said Hiccup politely, and he meant this most sincerely, for Hiccup wasn't a natural burglar. "But I really, really need this book. It is a matter of life or death." And then he went on less politely, for he was feeling rather indignant about this. "And these books aren't just your books, they belong to the whole of the Viking nation. We should all be allowed to read them, and there really should be a library that is open to the public." I do agree with that. "All this knowledge could be very important." "Well, I'm very sorry too," whispered the hairy, scary librarian, sadly shaking his head and drawing out another sword with his left hand. "But I think these books are mine, or mine." He's not a very good librarian. Most librarians I know are very nice, but this is not a good one. A horrible, gloating and greedy look came into his mad eyes. "Perhaps you should bring this up with the thing. However, I'm not sure they will listen to you, as books are considered to be dangerous and strictly banned by their own order. And furthermore, it will be rather difficult for you to bring it up, because you will be dead." And the librarian lunged at Hiccup with his sword in his right hand, and at Kamikaze with the sword in his left, and the three of them began to fight. "Can't we talk about this like reasonable people?" asked Hiccup, jumping out of the way of the librarian's razor-sharp sword and ripping in with a thrust of his own. "Did I say I was a reasonable person?" whispered the librarian in surprise. "Mash him!" squealed Toothless, who, like all dragons, had a bloodthirsty streak. "Rip him and tear him and stomp on him and bite him and take all his eggs." The librarian was a very fine sword fighter, but both Kamikaze and Hiccup were extremely good at sword fighting themselves, and the librarian was fighting them both at the same time. "Oh, you're really quite good at this for a moronic meathead," exclaimed Kamikaze in pleasure, as he defected to Loki's lunge with a double twist, and replied with a thrusting thaw and a couple of swivelling swipes. Kamikaze loved to have the practice of fighting a really good opponent. "Be quiet," hissed the hairy, scary librarian. "Unless you want the Driller Dragons to find us, and death by Driller Dragons is such an untidy way to die. Vast needed to go swiftly on the point of my heart slices, but it's up to you, of course." Hiccup was in fine form, neatly dodging the librarian's fierce straw strokes and throwing in some challenging thrusts of his own, while Kamikaze's sword was swivelling like a tornado. Toothless and Stormfight also entered into the battle, shrieking with encouragement and flying as close as they dared so they could nip in and bite the librarian on the sword arm in order to put him off. But on the other side, the librarian seemed to be unmoved by the dragon bites. He was a fully grown adult. Sorry, I missed the illustration there. That's a hairy, scary librarian fighting all four of them at once. Hiccup and Kamikaze and Toothless and Stormfly. But on the other side, the librarian seemed to be unmoved by the dragon bites. He was a fully grown adult, much stronger and bigger than they were, calm and as capable as a juggler at fighting both of them at the same time, and every thrust he made was aimed at their hearts. "You know, I've got a bad feeling about this, Kamikaze, said Hiccup slightly nervously as the librarian deflected his double-backed left-handed through lunge. I think this guy could be a flashmaster, like humongously hotshot the hero. You know, I was just wondering the very same thing, said Kamikaze with interest. Only a flashmaster would know how to parry a switch-hander, an overpoint and a golden grim piercer and live to tell the tale. Flashmasters were the very highest of sword artists. They'd all studied under the great Flashburn himself at his school of sword fighting, and they were virtually unbeatable at the art. I is a flashmaster, croaked the hairy-scary librarian. His death-mask grin was most horrible to behold. Now I was going to croak you with me heart slicers. From your goggle screams, the hairy-scary librarian lunged the right at Kamikaze's throat, and she just managed to turn the blade away in time, so it only scratched her a little. To your grub washers, the hairy-scary librarian lunged to the left at Hiccup's stomach, and Hiccup just managed to bring out his own sword in time, so that he was only giving a tiny graze. Fish legs, shouted Hiccup shakily. Help! Go and look up in the sword fighting section over there. I can see a book by Flashburn, and it might say how to defeat a sword artist. Oh my goodness, I'd forgotten about Flashburn's book. You don't meet Flashburn, by the way. You don't meet Flashburn until book 9, but yeah, anyway, this is his book. Fishlegs had been spending the past 10 minutes struggling to get his sword out of his scabbard. Now he jumped to the sword fighting section and ran a trembling finger along the F shelf. Fierce thrust, fight hard, here it is, Flashburn! He dragged out the big heavy book called Sword Fighting with Style and riffled through the pages looking for sword artistry. The hairy-scary librarian was getting a little confused as to why the fight was still going on. As a great flashmaster, he who had had 10 years of personal one-on-one tuition from the world-renowned Flashburn, sword fights against him normally did not last very long. All right, so he had 2 opponents this time, but they were only children, one as skinny as a prawn and the other a tiny little blonde girl. Admittedly, they were extraordinarily good sword fighters for children, but even then he should have been standing over there, their 2 dead bodies 5 minutes ago, wiping the blood off his heart slices with the end of his beard. Why is you not croaked yet? Hissed the hairy-scary librarian in surprise. You're so titchy and piddly. I scrambling my brain box so that you was not worm burgers some time ago. The hairy-scary librarian was still confident of success, however. He gathered up his strength for the final attack, closed his eyes so that he was totally blind and could better channel energy from the great god Woden, and launched himself outward to the left or right with deadly accuracy. His heart slicers simultaneously thrust aside the swords of both Hiccup and Kamikaze and plunged towards their hearts like heat-seeking missiles. And Fishlegs saw the peril of the moment as he flicked desperately through the pages of sword fighting with style, muttering, lunges, parries, double cartwheels, oh bother this for a load of lobsters. And we'll have to find out what Fishlegs does. That's the beginning of the sword fighting style to try and save the situation. Don't worry. See you then.